Hey, welcome to the Cam Otis Show. Preparation, prepare, being ready, being
Mhm.
prepared. All those sort of things and variations of it is what we're going to talk about. And that's, you know what, in keeping with our theme for the year, our theme for the month, March is preparation, prepare. And, if you remember, the word for the year is focus. For January, it was begin.
Mhm.
And for February, it was clarity. So, real simple review, focus. You know what you're looking for, so you find it, right? Uh, Begin, start doing something.
Yep.
Don't just sit around and talk about it. Don't sit around and dream about it. Start executing. Begin movement, we used to say in the military. And clarity, meaning you know what you're looking for. So you don't just focus on it, but you can see it and you can
Mhm.
visualize it and you know what you look for. And then now, March, prepare. And preparing means being ready, right?
Mhm.
Actually, I got to go. I got to go. I got to take a step back. It does not mean being ready. Now,
Mhm.
years ago, when I was a cadet, one of my really good buddies told me this. Lou Fancher, Lou Fancher, a great friend of mine. Lou said, "You can never be ready. You can only be prepared." Because
Mhm.
being prepared is continuous. Being ready means you've stopped. So if you think about that
I
and
like that one.
use that context, because there's always more to do, you know.
Oh yeah.
We don't, in the Army, we didn't talk about having a foxhole ready. We prepared our foxholes. Interestingly enough, a play on words, but it's true because you can always improve your position. We can go
Exactly.
into
And
that.
I was going to say, as we start talking about preparation, I had an epiphany. I'll say it. Thank you to the Simpsons movie all those years ago. A great realization of utter truth, or whatever they say in that. But I had this realization as I was really nervous before my first rugby camp with the Engage Foundation, coaching 100 kids, running an entire program with 10 coaches out there, first time doing it. And I had this moment the night before of, holy crap, I don't feel prepared. I was getting anxious. I was sweating. I was feeling terrible because I didn't feel prepared. And then I had a moment where I realized, or more so, I didn't feel ready. And I had this moment where I realized that I've never really felt ready before a rugby game. I've never really felt ready before a business pitch. I've never felt ready. It's because you can't. To your point, exactly. You really teed me up for that one. You can never really be ready. All you can do is continue to prepare. And when you start to shift your mindset like that, you get to a point of constant preparation where you're always improving yourself, and then you'll wind up in a situation where, hell, if anything, you're going to be over prepared for it because you keep poking holes in your own strategy over and over and over again. And then by the time you're done, no one's going to be able to poke holes in it because you've already thought of everything.
Yeah. Well, and that's what preparation gets you. And uh, the Boy Scout phrase, be prepared. I was Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, and all that. So that was drilled into my head. And, even in Boy Scouts, we were always taught, well, what's the situation you're going into? What else could happen? Because what is being prepared when in that sense is risk mitigation
Mm-hmm.
in that mindset. In special forces, in the Green Berets, we were always prepared by doing our planning, our rehearsing. And then we also used the acronym PACE, one of my favorite things to talk about, PACE. And what PACE stood for is these four words: primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. And what that means is for everything that we had and we did, we had those fallbacks, everything from food and water resupply to ammo to food. I already said food, to communications to taking down the target. We had multiple means that we'd bring along to make sure that the
Mm-hmm.
target that we were going after still got uh, serviced, which is the politically correct terminology. Still killed the son of a bitch if he was a bad guy, uh, or whatever the operation called for. Not all of them
Mm-hmm.
called for killing a dude, but we always had pace in mind in
Mm-hmm.
everything we did. We would have 100-pound rucksack full of pace because that was our job. We had to have all those fallback plans
Mm-hmm.
in order to be successful and ensure that we were successful, because it was a critical operation, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. Same thing holds true in your life and in your business.
Mm-hmm.
You just go forward with just one thing in mind, or do you have fallback plans? Do you have alternates?
Mm-hmm. You always got to have options. If you're and that's what I think, as we talk about preparation, that's one of the things you're really doing is you're giving yourself options as you're moving forward. There's always going to be things happening. We've said it 100 times on this show, probably by now. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? We make a plan and then God laughs. Whatever version of it you like best, plans fall apart as things go forward. And that's where preparation comes in, is because when you are prepared, when you truly understand the situation you're getting yourself into, those contingencies come naturally. You don't have to stop and think, okay, crap, now what do I do? You already know what the next contingency is. You already know what your next option is. And you can check your list all the way down, even to that very last option, because you understand the situation so well. As you were talking, of course, I draw it back to rugby. And in every situation, especially at the higher levels, like here, U of A with coaching there, even when you and I coached high school, the all-state team together, when you coached on a situation, because rugby is made up of many different situations, you broke down the situation to prepare them for the different things that may happen inside that situation. And if you don't have the understanding of the situation, then you're not going to understand which option you need to be choosing. And there's going to be, we like to use the rule of three options usually. Sometimes there's a lot more options. There's always room for creativity, right? But you have to understand the situation. And I think that's really the first step to preparation, is understanding the situation to its fullest extent, having that clarity, if you will, of the situation that you're going into. And then recognizing what's inside of your control, just like we talked about with clarity, because if you try to prepare off of something that's outside of your control, you're never going to win. I can put a really easy anecdote on this one as I'm getting ready for my pitch this weekend. Verby going out, try to raise some money. It's exciting. But I had a moment earlier this week where I was stressing out, and I realized I was getting worried about somebody saying no to me. Why would I worry about that? That's not in my control. What's inside my control is my pitch. So I went back and I prepared and I prepared and I prepared. If I tried to prepare based on something that is so far outside my control, like somebody saying no for whatever freaking reason, rather than preparing what I actually have, I would be a failure this weekend. But when you turn yourself back and you say, okay, what can I control? How can I prepare for the situation that's in front of me? That's when you really are going to find your success, because that's something that's inside of your control.
Well, and prepare is a really big umbrella phrase. I mean, really, it's kind of, really with all of these words that we've chosen for our themes for the year.
That's how you know they're good words.
Yeah. Because when you think about, prepare covers the plan, putting together a plan. It talks about rehearsing whatever it is you're going to do, whether it's a, captain's walkthrough the night before the match sort of thing, or rehearsing your pitch or your speech that you're going to give, or doing a walkthrough of an operation before you get on the plane to do the infiltration. Those are all preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And even to the fact of, and this is one of the things that I think gets skipped over a lot. And that's, we used to do it, we call it PCIs, pre-combat inspection. So not only are you putting together the plan and then you're rehearsing the plan, but then you're going back and you're checking all your gear. So you think about that. You've got a big pitch this weekend, or maybe I'm giving a presentation next week. Well, when I do that and I make sure all my little electronic things, my PowerPoint clicker is going to work. If I'm doing it in person and I've got a laser to point, I make sure my laser is going to work, and all of these sort of things. And you know what else I do? I got a bag full of stuff, of cables and other things, because that's my pace. Mm-hmm. Because you know what? How many times I've had to pull out those cables because they said, oh, Joe was supposed to bring those and he didn't bring those. Can you just do it desk side? No, I'm not going to do it desk side, because guess what? I follow PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. And I ain't even got my emergency, because you know what my emergency is in a presentation? Printed out version.
Yep. That's what I was going to say. You got to hand it out to everybody at that point.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is, right? And if you start to think about things like that, going back to what you said, what we do is we prepare our mind for the implementation, for the execution. So when things don't go according to plan, which happens 100% of the time, we can react in accordance with our outcomes still in mind, meaning I know what the end state is. I've rehearsed, I've talked through variations, and I have my primary, alternate, and contingency for every element of the event, of the execution. And when things don't go right, power goes off.
Mm-hmm.
The right guy doesn't show up, all those sort of things. I've got my fallback plan.
Mm-hmm.
I know what to do. And even if it's not something I've thought of before, because I've thought of the other things that happen, and an unknown unknown, one of my favorite things, an unknown unknown happens, which
Mm-hmm.
is really, you think about it, it's kind of exciting in a weird sort of way.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh yeah,
that's that weird high that we live off of, isn't it?
throw that challenge down. Let's see what unknowns you get. Oh, there's an accident. The road's closed. Okay, well, it's a good thing I did blah, 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 or I can fall back, all these sort of things. What do you do? That's it. That's all falls under the umbrella of
Mm-hmm.
preparation.
And what I think, you're talking about the umbrella of preparation. I think if there is a foundation for preparation, it is understanding your situation. That whatever you are going into, you have to have as in-depth of an understanding of what that situation is so that you know how to properly prepare for it. If you're going into something, here, I'll use myself as an example. I'm going into my pitch meeting this weekend. I am not presenting to a group of college students or high schoolers with a projector in the front. I'm printing out paper because I'm working with a 60-year-old man. I understand what I'm going into. If I went in and made a big presentation with animation, all this different stuff, I would lose it. I would completely lose him the entire way. If I went into a high school presentation to go talk to kids about how great it is to do virtual events or to get into agriculture, any of my passions, or rugby even, and I was handing out papers, I would lose them. I need an animation. I need a video. I need something. You have to understand what situation you're getting yourself into so that you can understand how best to position yourself inside that situation. And if you don't understand that positioning, then you're going to prepare yourself in completely the wrong way.
Yeah. Well, so really one of the things, so we have this big umbrella of preparation. So what does that entail? I mentioned planning, I mentioned pre-combat inspections. One of the other things we used to do is we would refer to as operational preparation of the battle space, and that's studying, the area study. It's even putting people on the ground and gathering information and that sort of stuff. But we do that in business too, right? We just call it a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
pre-mortem.
Yeah, pre-mortem. This is
a
great way of thinking about that. That is exactly a great analogy of what we call it OPB, in some ways. But it is those things. So what it all boils down to, though, is what are you preparing for? And having that understanding to know what you're preparing for. How do you know that? You got to break those things down. You got to begin to understand what's there so that, going back to clarity and focus, right? We have to focus on what we're preparing for. I was going to do the double focus thing again, and then that focus gives us the clarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more we understand it, the clearer the picture becomes. And the clearer the picture becomes, the more we know what we have to do to prepare it. Do I need to read that book over there again? Do I need to go study? Do I need to make a phone call to somebody? All these sort of things start to come into place when you start that preparation cycle.
It's when you have the focus and the clarity of your situation when you're going into something, you're totally right. You have to understand what it is you're preparing for. It's like we've said this a bunch. You got to ask the right questions, right? And if you're going into something, if you're going into a pitch, and you are thinking about all of the different ways that you're going to grow the business and all of these different things and this big picture stuff, you're thinking about the wrong thing. You're preparing for the wrong thing. You're really, you're playing next week's game before today's kickoff, basically, is what's happening. And instead, what you have to do is look at what are you actually trying to get out of it. I am trying to explain my business as best as I can. That is what I am preparing for. I'm not preparing for somebody to say no or yes, because that's outside of my control. I'm preparing to explain my business. That's all I'm really doing this weekend. You can put a fancy term on it, like I'm going to go pitch to an investor. Yeah, that's exciting. I'm just talking about my business, the same thing I do every single day. The difference is it's going to be to someone else. But when you break down the situation like that and you really understand it, then you know how to prepare, because so many people get caught up in the lights of the situation almost. Whether it's, a Friday night game under the lights at the stadium, or it's a pitch to an investor, or whatever it is, people get caught up in that rather than understanding what the actual situation is. Hey, Dad, is rugby any different on Friday or Saturday? Is it any different under the lights versus in the sun? No.
Nope. Is it
It's
any
rugby.
different in the sun or in the snow?
No, it's rugby. It's just rugby. And if you think about it that way, you look at it and you say, it's just rugby. I'm just talking about my business, whatever it is. And you boil it down to those basic components and you prepare that way, you're going to have so much of a better mindset moving forward into whatever the situation is.
Well, I think what it really comes down to is what's the outcome you're looking to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So if in your preparation, you should identify and create, and if you're working within a team, tell everybody what the end state is. What's the outcome of what we're about to do? What's the outcome of this? What's the outcome of that? What's the outcome of talking to somebody about your business? What's the outcome of a social media post that you're looking to get? All these things have an outcome. And if you understand what the outcome is, then those contingencies that I referred to that are also part of the preparation that you have at the ready, then they help guide you back to that outcome when you have to shift off path.
Exactly. And, I think the interesting thing when you start talking about the outcomes is how do you, and, when you talk about especially anxiety around these type of situations, is one of the simplest tools that you can use to combat that type of anxiety is to look at the outcome and say, okay, so if you're focused on the negative outcome, that's the outcome all the way down here. That's the worst possible thing. I'll use my weekend as the easiest example since it's on top of my head anyway. But the worst outcome, they say no, shut the door in my face, never want to see you again, all this type of stuff. It can be terrible. That can be the very, very bottom. The top one, blank check. Oh my gosh, that's such a good idea. You're the smartest person I ever met. Here's a blank check, take all my money. Everything in between there is an option. And you have to recognize that and not let it paralyze you. Kind of analysis paralysis where you look at things, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many possible things that can happen. But those are all outside your control. Mm-hmm. You can have your ideal outcome. You can have a negative outcome that you're trying to steer away from. And then in reality, it's probably going to fall somewhere in between those. So you have to have those kind of benchmarks when you're preparing to understand what kind of situation you're getting yourself into, so that if you do get the door slammed in your face, if they do put up 45 points in the first half, whatever it is, you are prepared for that extreme negative situation, just like you're prepared for the extreme positive situation. I'll praise you as one of the interesting coaching things you did that I talk about this all the time when I coach rugby, especially at the higher level stuff, was state championship. It would have been my senior year. At halftime, I think we were whooping up on them. It was like 35-0, something like that. And we were all so excited. We come in and he said, boys, shut the hell up. They can put up just as many points in the second half as we did in the first half. It's the same amount of time. And we all shut up because you're totally right. There's nothing that can stop them from doing the exact same thing we just did and making us look stupid. And the only way that you can stop that from happening is preparing and not letting your mindset get screwed up.
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to remember the exact NFL games, which there were several, or something very similar happened just this last season. I think even in the playoffs. Yeah. Where,
we could just make fun of the Pats Falcons game, 28-3, right? That's the easy one.
That's probably the one I was trying to remember. But yeah, so, that. And then this goes back to what we were saying earlier, though, is preparation is continuous. Mm-hmm. Preparation is continuous even during execution. So it doesn't stop during execution. The whole phrase that my buddy Lou, when he said that, it had to do with room inspections. And, Yeah,
I'm sorry, I gotta stop you. That's hilarious. That's because that's such a big phrase, and it's room inspections. It's not. We were going into the jungles of the Congo. No, no, no. It was room inspections. I just had to appreciate that for a second.
but it's true. I mean, that means it can apply to so many different things, though. So if you think about that, in cleaning your house, there's always something else you could clean to get it clean,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even if you just cleaned it, did you get all of it? And that's what preparation is. It is doing it more and more and more
Mm-hmm.
until the point that you cannot, until you're executing, you're moved forward, like the room inspection is complete, right?
Right.
The guy that's inspecting your room is in there, and you know what? I can't get to that corner where I just noticed there's dust over there. I can't take care of that, but I might be able to take care of something over here behind me.
Mm.
But it's that sort of sense of what else can I do? Going back to the foxhole analogy, you know, in the Army, you dig a foxhole, and the first thing you do is you scratch out one that's about 6-8 inches deep that you can lay in flat. And then the next thing you do is you dig down so it's armpit deep. And then you put what's called a grenade sump at the bottom. And you put overhead cover. And oh, by the way, while you're doing all that, you're camouflaging. And then there's more. And guess what camouflage does? Plants die. Once you cut them off and you put them on your little foxhole to camouflage it, it dies. So now you got to continuously improve your camouflage.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else, the dirt, the walls. You see pictures in World War I of those reinforced trench lines, and you think about, nobody ever talks about how long they sat there doing that and how many man hours went
Oh
into
my
digging
gosh.
those. Having dug a couple of foxholes in my life, that's a lot. That's a lot of preparation that they did in order to prepare their foxhole, their finding position. So that's that analogy going forward of keep doing it, keep preparing until that moment. I was reading an article a while back about a guy who was going to do his first keynote,
Mm-hmm.
and he was on the plane. He was literally out loud practicing on the plane, practicing his speech. That's that preparation to ensure that you execute at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's all about in the end, is what else can I do to make myself better at this, to give me more opportunity to perform at the highest level.
You got me thinking. I think there's an experiment I may want to run if I go back to grad school and I can run my fun behavioral science experiments on the undergrads and whatnot. You got to test at 10 a.m. Everyone gets there 9:45, gets into the room. At 10 a.m., you announce the test is 10:30. They can't leave the room though. What do? And the question is just like what you just asked. What else can I do to be prepared for this situation? What else is there? And I think that goes into an understanding, going back to clarity, it goes into understanding of yourself and an understanding of your situation. If you are somebody who can just read through the book over and over and over again, right up until the test, and that works for you, then that's what you're doing before a test. If you're somebody who, when you are trying to I can't think of the word. Holy crap. What is it when you're trying to cram? When you're cramming for a test. There we go. I could not think of that word for a second. When you're cramming for a test, some people do that. Some people don't. One of the greatest things I ever did for my own education in college is I realized that I was somebody who didn't need to cram for tests, because when I crammed for tests, I freaked out about how much information there was. Knowledge is part of it. Mindset is the other part you got to think about. And then there's the physical aspect. I'm driving out to San Diego today to go make my pitch tomorrow. So did I work on my pitch this morning? No, I did yoga, because if my back hurts tomorrow, I'm going to be in a crappy mindset. If I sit there thinking through all this information over and over and over again, I'll get too excited. I'll probably talk too fast. There's all these little things that I had to understand about myself going into this situation. And if I didn't understand those things, then I would be preparing the wrong way. And so you have to look at yourself and the situation and understand, should I be cramming for this? Should I be practicing my presentation on the plane? Or, hey, some people for that probably just need to have a whiskey on the plane and chill out for an hour and then they'll be okay. That's so for a lot of people, that mindset, just calming down before a test, before a pitch, whatever it is, that's what's going to do you so much more good than reading for 5 more minutes. So that was a long-winded thing, but I would be very interested to get a group of 100 undergrads in there for a math test and see what people do right beforehand.
That would be interesting, because I'd be willing to bet at least 50% of them pull out their phones and do whatever you
Yep.
do on phones, Snapchats or whatever.
If that resets your mindset,
Yeah, but
you never know.
Well, and truthfully, you're right there also. You would have to also measure how well they did on the test.
Mhm.
And that's where, and then there's all other kinds
Oh
of
yeah,
things.
now we're gonna have to test them 3 or 4 times, graph
Yeah.
it out. Oh yeah. Well, I'll design that. I got a while before I plan on going back to school, so we got plenty of time to figure out that experiment.
All right. Well, I got to throw out a Stoic quote that I actually ran across this morning I can't even say preparation all of a sudden, in preparation for our show this morning by Epictetus. And it is, we must undergo a hard winter training and not rush into things for which we haven't prepared.
Mm.
So think about that. What he's saying is, put yourself in the right frame of mind, do the things you need to do to be ready, to be prepared to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sit back and then just go execute. Yeah, you can do that. You want to go out and run a marathon tomorrow without any preparation? Sure, go ahead. See what happens. You might finish it. You might.
You sure
And what's
might.
the recovery period? What's going to happen afterwards? All those sort of things, because there was no preparation in going into it. And that's what he's talking about. How hard have you worked in order to prepare for that execution? That's what's important. And that's what Epictetus is talking about there. Hey, put in the work, man. Put in the work to make sure that you are prepared to succeed. Otherwise, I wouldn't even give you a 50-50 chance.
I'm amazed that this didn't come up yet in this episode, but as we're talking about that, it makes me think of flow, because flow is when preparation exceeds the situation you are in, and that is where you can over prepare in a good way. If you are out there and you're ready, you're playing rugby in the snow for months, and then it's a sunny day. Oh my gosh, that's going to be easy. There's so many little things like that. Hell, I used to do things like this for studying. You study when you're tired, just like you play rugby when you're tired, and then it makes it easier when you're not tired, right? I would go do workouts and then try to cram my study in right afterwards, because when you don't have oxygen in the brain, it's hard. And then when you're sitting in a room and you have all the oxygen you could possibly need, it's easy. And so that's what preparation is really about, is challenging yourself. Because when you challenge yourself in that way, you're able to reach that point of flow when the actual situation comes.
No, that's awesome. And since you brought that up, it's a great time to transition to what you learned, because that's what I hadn't heard that definition. I love that definition. Flow is when preparation exceeds the need to perform. Is that
Exactly
what you said? Yeah. I love that, because there's so much truth to that. I talked about flow in some other sense, flow in a team and an organizational flow, but in an individual state of mind, that's a great way of looking at it. Flow is when my preparation exceeds the need to perform. So yeah, that's what I learned. How about you, Camden?
I was going to say real quick, I think that's an Angela Duckworth. Angela Duckworth quote, if you or anyone else wants to look into that a little bit more, it's probably in Grit. But what I learned is that in preparation, you need to identify the outcome. I think when you were talking about that really hit home to me, that you need to understand the outcome you're looking for and prepare for it. And that takes a real deep understanding what the situation is. But if you're preparing for the wrong outcome, then you're never going to win. That's all it really comes down to. If you're preparing for the wrong outcome, you're not going to win.
Or if you don't have an outcome, you don't have it defined, you're just mucking around, you ain't going to do nothing, right?
Exactly. How the hell are you going to go score in a game of rugby if you don't know which way the try zone is?
Yeah. Preparation, man. You gotta be prepared for it and know what's next, know what that outcome is so that you can achieve it. Great, Kim. That's a lot of fun. looking forward to diving into more preparation and being prepared for more preparation as we go forward into March. How about
Yes,
you
sir.
run us out?
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our sponsors, Verbi Virtual Events and Tribe and Purpose. Find your purpose, build your tribe. You can check out recent episodes of the Cam Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamonotishow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.